Hey everybody, welcome to the Rhapsody studio here in Anthem, Arizona for another episode of our Rhapspired video series. We're going to go a little different direction today. Inspiration can come in a lot of different forms and a lot of different sources. It's been very cool. We've heard stories about all of our instructors and some guests that have come in and talked about who inspired them or how they got really jazzed about doing music. We're going to talk a little bit today about that concept of when the inspiration to actually get better came to fruition a little bit. You know, we all start probably at a certain age where we're at, and we have very few skills to start with. We're learning how to play an instrument. We're learning the mechanics of holding the instrument. We're learning note 1, note 2, or a finger position or things like that. And at a certain point, that trajectory takes on a different tack where we think, you know what, hey, this is something that I could be pretty good at. This is something I really enjoy doing. And the little mental shift comes in of, hey, you know what, I want to be better at this. I want to be good. And you realize that practice is such a key part of that. So today's episode is going to be a little bit about some of the practice tips and techniques that I've developed over the years, kind of maybe where they came from and that sort of thing, and share them with you. The hope is that some little nugget or gem will stick with you and something that works pretty good for you. I know for me, I started playing really a year earlier than almost anybody in my area. I think in one of the earlier stories I had talked about that maybe. But I had a year ahead of most everybody that I jumped into band with. And so, unfortunately, I was a year ahead of everybody, which meant I could play everything better than everybody, which instilled in me in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, the not need to practice. Because I was able just to play what they put in front of me. I was able to get first chair every time. As a trumpet player, I was a little cocky, a little arrogant probably about it too. And I got to high school, really the same thing. I was invited right away into the high school jazz band, did a little audition, did that. I was kind of the guy there. And it got to be into my my junior year, if I remember correctly. I think it was my junior year. And we had a marching band solo. We had an audition for a marching band solo, and of course I'm like, well, of course I'm going to get it. And my buddy, who was second chair, who'd been playing next to me for about 5 years, beat me out and got the solo. And I literally had to stop and go, huh? What happened? And that's the time when I kind of retooled my thinking about it. Because I was starting to get a little more serious about having a college trajectory. I was thinking about, doing some of the all-state and all-Northwest auditions. And that was really a gut check for me to go, oh, wait. Maybe I have to work a little more at what I'm doing. And so I really started on the trajectory, started getting into lessons on a pretty serious basis. I took from Roy Cummings, a great trumpet professor at University of Washington for a number of years, and Gary Marsh out in the North Shore School District of Washington State, and really started focusing on development as a trumpet player and really trying to find skills to do. So, of course, going to college, we were constantly taking lessons in college. You're constantly working with either older musicians or your instructors, your people of that nature, the professors and such. And a couple of things I developed over the years that I think are really important. So I brought some tips up on the board here because I think, to me, I try and simplify things to concepts that everybody can grasp. And I love having diagrams or very simple concepts that we can utilize for the students, because sometimes if you give a student too much information, it really can overwhelm them. If you give them a small concept, and I think really demand of your students to think about how they are going to apply that concept, it really helps them move along. So for me, practice needs to have a couple specific questions. What are you going to practice? When you sit down to practice, you should know what you're trying to accomplish. What is it I'm going to practice? Is today a range day? Is it an articulation day? Am I working on a specific piece of music or an excerpt? What is it I need to work on? Too often, especially at a young age, probably even at an older age, sometimes we just sit down and just play through something. And we play through it again, we play through it again, we play through it again, and we don't really accomplish something that gives us that forward motion. Granted, I think it's great if your intention for the day is, today I just want to play. I'll do that. I'll pull up 5 different solos, I'll pull up a couple recordings, and I'll just play for 45 minutes just to have that thing. And that's fine too. That is a very important part of our routine as well. But I'm talking about when you get down to the nuts and bolts and you've got something to work on. I'm trying to increase my range because I've got to be a lead trumpet player in a jazz band. I'm trying to increase the quality of my sound because I've got a solo coming up that I've got to be in. I've got to increase my speed or articulation because of something I have to do. So you want to think about what is it you're going to practice. Don't ever start a practice routine without some kind of a what. I think how is an important word also. I ask students all the time, how should you practice? And I usually get this kind of stare. I don't know. Like, what do you mean? How should you practice, right? I have some key components that I talk about with my kids. These are my top 4 things as a brass player. Sound is always number 1. As a brass player, because of the limited number of valves we have, we've got to work on a lot of lip slurs and moving through ranges. Scales, that's the heartblood of any musician. You're going to be in songs with all sorts of different keys and scales. And the ability to sight read, the ability to get through music very quickly. So when I talk about the how, I'm thinking, well, A, I'm going to play with my best sound all the time, no matter what I'm working on. Another thing that kids do with the how is they'll just jump into something. They'll run into it full speed. They'll make all sorts of mistakes. And they do it again full speed, make all sorts of, and they do it again full speed, make all sorts of mistakes. And so I ask them, how fast should you practice? What's the best appropriate speed? And they finally learn to repeat back to me, I should practice at the speed that I'm the most successful at, right? Think about that for a moment. Matter of fact, here's a little analogy I gave them. If you play something 10 times, and 5 of those times it's spot on perfect, and 5 of the times it's rough and doesn't sound good, what have you effectively trained? You really have trained a net 0. Because neuromuscularly, memory-wise, all the things we put into it, you've given it a diffused amount of disinformation of what you've been working on. Kind of even comes back to that what and how and combines in the final with purpose. What is the purpose of our practice session? If we're going to want to get better at something, you need to be consistent about playing it accurately, routinely as you go forward until it becomes a comfortable thing for you. You don't want to feel like every time you pull up a song or a solo that it's new or it's going to create anxiety because there's that area you never quite fixed. So practice at a speed that you can be successful. If I practice something slow 10 times in a row, I'm probably going to play it right even when I play it fast because I've trained the fingers, trained the ears, my air and my diaphragm and my Amish, everything knows kind of how to approach the phrase and what I'm doing. So that's a real important thing. So if I'm taking on a piece of music, I'll look at this year's the trumpet regional stuff that they're doing here in Arizona. And it's a line that it's got a lot of speed to it. And I'm going to probably, if I'm looking at this for the first time, number one, I'm thinking sound first. Looking at the line, I'm really kind of mapping out my thing. I can tell the key signature and what it is. And I want to get the flow of the melody. My purpose in this right now, I want to hear what the melodic flow of this is. That they're doing. So A, you're hearing that I'm trying to be really even and consistent in my sound on everything. I'm trying to be very firm on every note so I get a sense of the sound process on that. That I felt pretty good about. I haven't put in dynamics, I haven't put it on the finishing touches. So next time I might say, okay, let me push a little bit and see what I can do. Right, that time went through and I had 2 gaffs in there and I kind of recognized where they were. They were crossing over into a couple interval jumps that I might want to go back and work on. Instead of going to the next line or instead of going faster, I'm going to come back for a moment. So right there's a B to E jump that I'm having a little bit of hard time getting across. I'm going to spend some time with that. This is maybe called the kind of the micro element of practicing is the recognition of, hey, wait a second, I don't want to gloss that over. I don't want to go on. I want to make sure I feel good about where that is on that. So I'm going to spend some time. How much time is pretty much up to every musician. We can joke around 100 times, play that 100 times correctly. As long as I get about 5 to 10 times where I feel really comfortable that my interval jump is right I'm probably going to move on to the next thing. So I'm going to break down that line until I feel very comfortable about that. Am I only seeking perfection? That's an interesting question. Only because I don't think perfection is something we ever attain. So I'm always trying to get as close as I can to perfection. That's a good question. I'll leave you guys for that one for you to answer out. Yourselves, I mean. But here's something I also tell students. It's okay to make mistakes, because here's the reality. We all make mistakes. Mistakes are going to happen when we play. Know this component. Is it a mistake that's kind of a weird one that usually doesn't happen? Or is it one that's consistently happening, right? The consistent one you want to fix. The one that just popped up one time, you just want to make sure you're aware of it and go over it, and don't worry about beating yourself up over that, okay? So then I would take that and I would see if I can create more speed to it, okay? So again, for me, the practice tips are, number one, I'm going to try and play with my best sound. I really want to approach with what is it I'm trying to practice today? You know, it's going to be a range day. It's going to be an endurance day. It's going to be an excerpt or an etude or a solo day. How am I going to practice? Position myself to be as successful as possible. Practice at a speed that works. Practice at a speed I can play well at. Be very orally, A-U-R-A-L-L-Y, orally critical of what you're hearing of yourself, right? Don't let things go by where you think you can come back and fix them. And again, just the purpose. Have a purpose and an intention to what you're doing. It's a wasted half hour if you really didn't get anything done. So think about where you're at. Could be having fun. This half hour is going to be about playing for fun. This half hour is going to be about really trying to refine something. But create those things. So for me, make sure you have a what, make sure you got a how, make sure you got a purpose, make sure your sound quality is always the best it possibly can be. And the other tip I have is only practice on the days you breathe. So for most of us, that's a lot. So, hey, I hope this has been a little bit helpful for some of you out there. Take one or two of these tips, take another tip from another instructor, combine your routine of what really makes you successful as a young musician, what makes you happy and joyful to get that practice session done and propels you on to do the next things you want to do. Because ultimately, it still is about inspiration and joy. So we hope that this has been helpful to you. Again, this is Mike Tuttle with Rhapsody Music here in Anthem, Arizona. You can always contact us. 623-465-7060. Our website is rhapsodymusicaz.com. You can email me here at mike@rhapsodyschoolofmusic.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if you want to schedule one of those free introductory lessons and just come down and even work on just the concepts of getting some practice routines, any of our instructors would love to help you with that. So we hope you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next video. So long.